that's the strength of it. So it really will improve your drawing. We are going to draw this, an example of this. You can tell my magazine that I've picked up, and this one as well. They're two different figures, both female, but we can do that another time, do different genders. But just to show you on this example page, I have basically a small fine brush. I also have a smaller one here, which is, I don't know what size, 100 in the tiny, and then this one underneath. This one's a bit more professional, this one, but I actually prefer it. It's Art Studio. You can see there immediately whenever you add the ink on, it basically flows straight from the brush. I find whatever Indian ink this is that it bleeds, or whether it was just the paper, but whenever you start, you commit to a line. So if you're doing any kind of small person, any, like as in a small body, you have to commit to it, and you can just let yourself figure out where the body is. But you can see it's starting to bleed there. So I don't know whether I've got I've loads of different Indian inks, but it's just Indian ink is what you go for. So a small brush, I'm using these little paper. This is just regular paper to start with, just to show you a few different techniques. The only technique I would really have for you is wipe as much away as you can of the excess, and then just apply it with confidence. So it's like everything I teach you. And the lighter the touch, obviously, the more you can, go back over a line. So the reason I'm showing you this is because if I was teaching you how to do figurative, if this person was standing with their feet kind of like so, you're just treating it like a pencil. And I want you to enjoy the flow of it, but not be intimidated, because you might find it's like very dark like so. When actually, if we were then to put any kind of hair on this person, or then we start to lengthen out their limbs, you actually, rather than having these chunky lines, you get this beautiful elegance with it. So that's why I don't always finish the figures that I do, because you can let the viewer fill in the last of the detail, and you can just get this real fluidity. Now, if you think about light and shade, so there's the back of the calf muscles. If we were to do even a little dance, so these are just our practice ones. So if you think about, so there we go, look, whenever you don't let it come off, it stays far too, like a big raindrop on the end, but you need there to be enough that it doesn't be transparent fully the whole way through. So if you think about a nice dancer, so we have a lovely head, then we have her body coming like so, we've got a nice arch in her back, breastbone, then we've got our leg. But now is where you really, I'm double dipping there, and then I'm letting the foot that go, and we have a little foot. So I'm not doing the same limbs in each way, I'm just letting this control, look, but it's bleeding there on me, so that's even a little bit too much I have. So then we come down, you can get this real effortless grace with it that you don't get with pencil, and you do not get with even charcoal as well, even willow charcoal. But if you think about that effortless flow that you can get with it, and then we put another arm here, we'll maybe take her a jawline here, and then we'll put a little bun on her head. You can work into the light and shade very easily, but you don't get variations. So that's the beauty of it, is that you have this single line and this light touch. But the downside is, once you make a mistake, you just have to commit to it. But it is the best way to improve your people drawing skills. So let's move on. This page underneath that I have is just mixed media. And we're going to draw this lovely woman here. I might use, so you'll see that my brushes are ever so slightly different. One's the thinner one actually I find sometimes a bit harder. This one, you really have to own it once you push down on it. If I show you. But still, no matter what, a thin brush is a good way to start, because it feels closest to the pencil. All right, so when you're doing any kind of figure, here we are, Merry Christmas from Brian Thomas. If you're doing any kind of figure drawing, so there's a little bit of a lesson in that, as well as Indian ink. You will have negative space around them. So if you look at the figure, if you squint your eyes when you look at this, you will see this hair will stand out. Then we have a gap here. We come down, there's a little gap. This is called your negative space in here between her arms. And then also in this side, and a tiny bit here with her hand. Then she's wearing a dress, so we don't have any limbs to really figure out. But the reason I chose this is because this dress, we can use our dark pushing in on the Indian ink here, and then also her hair. In terms of her facial features, you never want to get too caught up in the detail with the facial features, but one way to look at it is to think about the bridge of the nose, and then also like a little bit of a lip line, but mostly a jawline, and ears or eyebrows are a good one too. But it doesn't have to be exactly like so. We're just doing our impression of that. So here we are. So we've got our Indian ink pot. Just remember it will drip and everything as well. I'm going to use the smaller one because when I was on my residency in Portugal, I used it to draw all the little grannies. And I'm kind of used to the flow of it. So get used, try all your little practice demos first. The only really technique that I have for you is light on the finger and then drawing it along. So rather than being down here in the bottom of the brush, you want to come up with it and keep it very like you're holding nearly like a chopstick. So nice and light. Okay, now this is a little bit far away from me, but we're going to give it a go anyway. Can you see? Yeah. Controversially, I will pretty much always start with the head, and that's often how I know it's not going to go well, or it does going to go well, or it's just a little moment in time and it's a drawing practice. Her head is slightly tilted, so I'm actually going to go up and around for there. That's her little bit of her hair there. Then I'm thinking about her jawline coming in. And then it is basically just thinking about bringing her right down. Now it's a little bit big than what I thought, but that's okay. We're going to bring this hair in. Her hair is quite a nice guide actually for this. Then a little bit of the jaw. Then we have her eyebrow here, and we have the nose coming down here. Now noses, you can just don't fill in a big honker nose is my advice, but you will see that that's already quite a lot on there. But the faster you move, the more impressive it actually turns out to be. So there's one eye and there's another eye. Putting in here, and then just a little bit more here. Now with the nose, mouth, then I'm just doing one side for now while I figure out how much I want to put in. So I'm going to go here. And it's about forgetting that because it's not perfect. Nobody cares. We're just practicing. Back into the dipping in, and then we come over here for her dress, her arm. I'm not even worrying too much if I've got the right length of arm. She's not going to win her modeling career here, but nobody minds. We're just figuring out just a little slant in the shoulders. The dress and the fabric is a good one to follow, but think about that negative space again here. So that automatically pinches in the waist. And then we have going here, that lovely bit of material. That's where the hip bone is. We're probably going to go off the page here, which is a very typical Ali move. I always judge wrong, but that's all right. Here, and then we come down. So we are actually off the page at the bottom here. She would have gone on. She's going to be falling off the end. That's okay. Because I really like this, I always go to where I know that I'm going to absolutely be on to a winner. So this is not going to do you any disservice. It's not going to make you overthink and worry about what you've done. So here we are. We're just layering in where there's light and shade. And you will see, even though you've only one shade and one color, look, see the way it splats. I don't know. I think this Indian ink that I got, which is Dollar Rowney, is a little bit too thin for me, but it's okay. Right. Then we're going to go to the hands. So hands can be tricky as well, but just think about the negative space. So I'm looking at the hand. She's obviously holding a lead. So there's the start of the hand, and there's the other part of it. Then we have our nice little lead, whatever. She's got a dog, obviously. We're not going to draw the dog today. Coming back up with a very dry brush, so taking off as much as possible. Now what I'm going to do here is just a little nostril over here. Mouth is like so, not perfect, nobody minds. And then I'm just going to shape in her face a little bit. So the eyebrow comes here. Then we have this lovely little curl. And I've made her jawline a little bit too sharp, so I'm going to bring that in. She's got a nice little earring on there. And then if you want, you can add a little bit of shade onto the side of her face, which comes down onto the neck as well. So we automatically start to fall on this side. And then we want to sharpen up what we've got here. So rather than it being a big round shoulder, we have it coming over, and then this arm is even a bit longer. Her sleeve comes down, so I'm dipping back in again. Sleeve comes down, and then this arm goes behind. It comes out about here. Negative space again. And then I'm just implying that her fingers and her hands are there. The material comes out, and then it fluffs back in. So you just get this like interesting perspective, which really will enhance and push your drawing, because this is the sort of thing. So now what I'm doing is I'm just filling in spots, and I'm going to add in some contrast. So I've got the side of my brush actually here, so that I get these thicker lines that are really dominant. See how much darker they are? But when it really will improve your drawing, because you're basically just getting the shape right. That's all we're doing right now. Her hand actually could be a little bit longer, so I'm going to just bring it down. And it's just playing with that. But if I had pencil, I'd be going into shade here. I would be doing a lot more to it. Like I'm going to bring this shoulder up a little bit actually. But that's a very quick look at how to do one figure. Not perfect, nobody minds. This is what I want you to do, is just continually just keep drawing. It's a moment in time. It's through my eyes, if only we'd got the right size. So let's move on to the other fancy lady. Who we have? So here we have, she's got legs, this one. This is a magazine that my in-laws brought. And I'm like, great, I'm just going to do some of those figures. I'm going to set her to the side because there's something quite nice about her on this page on her own. It takes on its own life of its own. You will see that there is really heavy ink on there. Unfortunately, as I was saying, the one that I've got, which is Daler-Rowney Kandahar drawing ink, it's bleeding a little more than I would like. I prefer them to be nice and sharp. But let's go with this lady. We are not advertising the gloss. We're just using a cutout from a magazine. Out after work. Not sure this is my vibe, but it's good for drawing and learning. All right, so we go again, and controversially, I just always go for the head. The way I'm filming is I'm not directly above it either, so my perspective is definitely off a little bit. I'm going to start higher up this time. And I'm basically just going to start with her jawline, which is one of the strongest bits there. And then there's no real negative space between her arms. There is this negative space between her legs. And there's obviously the negative space around her shoulders. So that's a guide, because when you look at this negative space, you will then start to form the actual subject matter in the middle. All right, so that's one jaw of hers. And then we're just fully committing to this shoulder. This one's slightly dropped down. I'm going to bring her neck down there and then over to here. I think again we might be wrong in terms of our judgment. She's going to come down. Oh well. So it's really, when it comes to this and it's fully clothed people, it's not like people in swimwear or people in leggings, then it really is free for all, right? It's up to you and how you depict it. Something like this is really fun and flowing. So I'm just going to do the whole thing fun and flowing. So there's her elbow coming in. Then I'm looking at her waistline. So we've got this little belt. I'm very light to touch on the brush. And that's going over to the side. So now I'm looking at the length of her arm coming down. But the reason that I want you to use your Indian ink is because it not only helps you to get ready with losing control. We become these perfectionists. But it also gives you, what do you see, what you produce? It's fun. And we all depict the same image in our own different way. So here we go. Yeah, and look at that. There's the flow of her skirt. Doesn't matter if it's exactly like it or not. We come up. Handbag is another one we're going to note in here. And it comes up and round. Enjoy the strap. Now this hand here. There's a big sleeve. Negative space a little bit in between the fingers, but her hand is kind of crunched like that. So we're just looking at, we want to imply that the top of it's there. And then we've got a little bit of negative space there, and here we are. And then we're bringing down the handle of the bag. Look at that, it's not even exactly so on it, but that's okay. We have this lovely big cuff. I'm just re-dipping each time. And now we have negative space here where her thumb comes down. But apart from that, I might just imply that her hand is there. Because sometimes with the Indian ink, it bleeds so much, it just looks like a big ugly claw. But you can go even finer than this, even finer. I do have a really fine brush in this is my home office I'm working in. Going back to the belt. So again, when you're covered in all of this clothes, you can pick which features you want to bring out and which you don't. I'm going to not ignore her head anymore, but I am going to use the collar as a guide. So the collar that brings me up, because her neck's basically covered, taking away a little bit of the excess. And then going really for hair. So in terms of hair, look at the bit at the top. So even when you're looking at ponytails and things, like look at the shape that the hair is producing. She's very pretty. So here it's bleeding around here already on me. Not no one's fingers, no one's bleeding, but I just mean the ink is bleeding. Nobody panic. So there we go. When you add in these extra little features, then it starts to shape into your face anyway. So there's a nice little scarf here. So all I'm doing is looking for significant parts of the scarf or the blouse that are standing out in a dark or a lighter shade. And then in terms of her face, we're going for bringing this in a wee bit more narrow. And then she's eye there. And I'm really just going for eyeball and a hood here. And that gets you started. And then we've got the brow and her brow. And then the nose again. You just decide if you want to put in the whole nose. I wouldn't recommend. But you'll get more confident with just like letting it be. And always remember that the lips are not as far under as you think underneath the... Just hit my head off the camera there. And then we can go back up and we can give her like full little eyes here for her to work on. And then she's got hair coming over here. But you get the idea. Now we want to make this smaller because it's too big. So, and that's also fine. Now, if you are absolutely like, like she's quite a box. I've made her very big here. But then you just fill in the details like this. Like, here we go. She's just got big shoulder pads on, girl. If you want, if I'm in real desperation, the one thing that I would do is I would bring like white acrylic paint into there, and then that takes that away and it just helps you recenter yourself. Just sometimes clients don't want that if I'm making an Indian ink one, they'd rather just have like all the busyness around it. But for me, if I really like, I'm really struggling with that shoulder being too big, you just bring the white right into it. And if you look at any of the other demos that I teach you I'm just doing in the lines of her skirt now, in terms of if we're painting with our red, blue, yellow, black and white, you will see that if we're doing a vase, I often say to you, if you don't like the shape of the vase, you bring another color in. Indian ink, you're pushing yourself so much to just use one color, no shading, anything, that it really is just becoming comfortable with the art of it. And of course we've gone off the bottom. I'm really showing you me at my absolute like. So in terms of feet, okay, we're just following where that is, negative space, which we're actually I would rather she's off the page than she has feet that look silly. So, and I'm going to color in her little socks here. This really is a vibe, this outfit, isn't it? And then the same here. Got a little ankle and she comes off the page. So it's quite a strong look. I'm just going to now do a little bit of shading here along the side of this arm. We're just ignoring her big chunky shoulder. And I'm going to bring in a little collar. But every detail you add is as much or as little as you want. There we go. It's fun. Oh, let's do her bag. So when I was doing the little grannies, I was sketching those live in Portugal during my residency. You're going to be so sick of me talking about my residency, but it was 3 weeks of my life. I nearly booked a flight home every single day. When I was there, I did every one of the wee ladies had a handbag. So there was times that they had no feet, as you can tell, I do things like that, or I'd move them too far in, but they always had a good handbag. So I like a handbag. There we go. A little bit of shading. Think about the places where shade will take place, in underneath the armpits, on one side of the face. You could put in a wee, like here, just a wee bit more detail in her face. None of it is to be perfect. All of it is to just get used to your Indian ink. But you can see I treat it like a pencil, pretty much. So there we go. We've got our two girls, females, women. There they are. Oh, you know what I could do here? Like, let's do this because it's fun. So I'm going to take her the same height because we're going to suppose that she is a model, and we're going to bring it down to where it should have been at the start. So that when you're readjusting anything or you're over 2 pages, which is what my little charcoal ladies wear, I you just readjust and you just let it go over 2 pages. There are no rules in my classroom apart from show up and make work and try your best. Be confident and get excited about finding your art style in my classroom. That is class is over for today. Oh, no, I can't bring her feet down because it's on a different page. It's fine. We're good. We see her. Well done. Indian ink, one brush. The beauty of it is you can take it anywhere. Whenever I ran out of acrylic in Portugal, it's what I used the most. It's what I would encourage you to do to improve your drawing. If you've just joined, we started with little sketches to begin with. I showed you how to do your little old school man with his head, body, limb. Indian ink allows you to put those together, merge them quite effortlessly. Really good for dancers. We'll maybe do meals the next time. I just grabbed a magazine because to show up for you guys, I gotta just make myself be here. And someone asked for Indian ink, so you're welcome. Have a lovely day. Please share it with your friends. Please give it a go. Find me on any social media, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and send me your work. I see I have a few emails from you guys, which is lovely, and I will have a look this week and get back to you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more or follow if you're on TikTok.